One man got lost in the forest. He wandered for a long time, and eventually, at dusk, he came across a hut. There was no one inside, so he decided to go to sleep. However, he couldn't fall asleep for a long time because there were portraits of people hanging on the walls, and he felt like they were staring at him in a sinister way. Eventually, he fell asleep from exhaustion. In the morning, he was awakened by the bright sunlight. There were no paintings on the walls. Instead, there were windows. One girl photographer decided to spend the day and night alone in a remote forest. She wasn't afraid because it wasn't the first time she had gone camping. She spent the whole day photographing trees and grasses with a film camera, and in the evening settled down to sleep in her small tent. The night passed quietly. The horror overtook her only a few days later. All four reels turned out to have excellent pictures, with the exception of the last frame. All the photos showed her sleeping peacefully in her tent in the darkness of the night. One day, a married couple decided to go to the movies and leave their children with a babysitter. They put the children to sleep, so the young woman just had to stay at home, just in case. Soon, the girl got bored and decided to watch TV. She called her parents and asked for permission to turn on the TV. Naturally, they agreed, but she had another request. She asked if they could cover the statue of an angel outside the window, as it was making her nervous. The line went quiet for a second, and then the father who was talking to the girl said, "Take the kids and get out of the house. We'll call the police. We don't have an angel statue." The police found everyone else in the house dead. The angel statue was never found. About 5 years ago, in the dead of night, there were 4 short rings at my door. I woke up, got angry, and didn't open the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. On the second night, someone called again 4 times. I looked through the peephole, but there was no one outside the door. I was telling this story this afternoon, and I joked that death probably had the wrong door. On the 3rd evening, a friend came to see me and stayed up late. The doorbell rang again, but I pretended I hadn't noticed anything to check if I was hallucinating. But he heard everything perfectly and, after my story, exclaimed, "Let's deal with these jokers," and ran out into the yard. That was the last time I saw him. No, he didn't disappear. But on the way home, he was beaten by a drunken group, and he died in the hospital. The call stopped. I remembered this story because I heard 3 short doorbells last night. My girlfriend texted me today, saying she didn't know I had such a charming brother, and a twin at that. It turns out she just stopped by my place, not knowing I was working late into the night, and he was there. Introduced himself, offered her coffee, told her some funny stories from his childhood, and walked her to the elevator. I don't even know how to tell her I don't have a brother. It was in the mountains of Kyrgyzstan. The climbers set up camp near a small mountain lake. Around midnight, everyone felt sleepy. Suddenly, a noise was heard from the direction of the lake, either crying or laughing. My friends, there were 5 of them, decided to check out what was going on. They found nothing near the shore, but they saw a strange fog in which white lights shone. The guys went to the lights. We only took a couple of steps towards the lake, and then one, who was walking last, noticed that he was standing knee-deep in icy water. He pulled the 2 closest to him, and they came to their senses and got out of the fog. But the 2 who were in front disappeared into the fog and the water. It was impossible to find them in the cold and darkness. In the early morning, the survivors hurried to get help, but the rescuers couldn't find anyone. By evening, the 2 who had just entered the fog had also died. One high school student was bored in class and looked out the window. He saw a photo thrown by someone on the grass. He went out into the courtyard and picked up a picture. It turned out to show a very beautiful girl. She was wearing a dress, red shoes, and she was holding up a V sign. The guy started asking everyone if they had seen this girl, but no one knew her. In the evening, he put the photo next to the bed, and at night he was woken up by a soft sound like someone scratching at the glass. A woman's laughter rang out in the darkness outside the window. The kid left the house and started looking for the source of the voice. He was walking away quickly, and the guy did not notice how, hurrying after him, he ran out onto the roadway. He was hit by a car. The driver jumped out of the car and tried to save the victim, but it was too late. And then the man noticed a photo of a beautiful girl on the ground. She was wearing a dress, red shoes, and she was pointing 3 fingers. This story was told to my granddaughter by my grandfather. As a child, he found himself with his brothers and sisters in a village that was being approached by the Germans. The adults decided to hide the children in the forest, in the forester's house. It was agreed that Baba Marfa would carry their food, but it was strictly forbidden to return to the village. So the children lived through May and June. Every morning Marfa left food in the barn. At first, the parents also stopped by, but then they stopped. The children looked at Martha through the window. She turned and looked at them in silence, longingly, and baptized the house. One day two men came up to the house and invited the children to come with them. They were partisans. The children learned from them that their village had been burned down a month ago. Baba Marfa was also killed. A 12-year-old girl lived with her father. They had a great relationship. One day, my father was going to stay late at work and said he would be back late at night. The girl waited for him, waited, and finally went to bed. She had a strange dream. Her father was standing on the other side of a busy highway and shouting something at her. She barely heard the words, "Don't open the door." And then the girl woke up to the bell. She jumped out of bed, ran to the door, looked through the peephole and saw her father's face. The girl was about to open the lock when she remembered a dream, and his father's face was somehow strange. It stopped. The bell rang again. "Dad." Ding, ding, ding. "Dad, answer me." Ding, ding, ding. "Is someone there with you?" Ding, ding, ding. "Dad, why aren't you answering?" The girl was almost crying. Ding, ding, ding. "I'm not opening the door until you answer me." The doorbell rang and rang, but the father was silent. The girl was huddled in the corner of the hallway. It went on like this for about an hour. Then the girl fell into